What's going on, everybody? It's Aurora YJ here, coming at you with a brand new video. So Yu-Gi-Oh's in a bit of an awkward spot right now in terms of pricing, with the adventure engine, the DPE package, and the hand traps galore running around without supervision in any deck that can afford them. I don't believe that it's all Gray and Griffin Riders though. I actually think this is a really good format for budget players to dip their toes into the competitive scene. Sure, your deck may seem better if it has the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer package or the adventure token engine or whatever splashed in there, but I don't really think it's mandatory in order for a deck to hold its own. And so, for the misinformed, I would like to bring to you all my top 5 budget decks for the competitive March 2022 Yu-Gi-Oh! Format. For this list, I'll be using budget to describe decks that, for the most part, can be viable when built with around $100 to spend. Now, I know this may seem a bit loose to treat that as budget, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Is an expensive hobby, especially when you're in the competitive scene. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. Our first budget deck comes to us in the form of a fan favorite on the channel, Dinosaur. So, Dinosaur admittedly is not in the best spots right now. Misk is still at 1 copy per deck, Prosperity is still mad expensive for some of the better builds of the deck, and of course Lancia is running amok. However, none of this really stops Dinosaur fully from being a meta-destroying threat. While the going first and follow-up potential of this deck are a bit dampened by the mediocre consistency and the lack of multiple copies of Misk, it's a very suitable going second deck, with power cards such as Dark Ruler No More and Evenly Matched being blowouts right now. Now, you may think that Evenly Matched being really expensive would hinder this a little bit, which honestly, if you don't have your playset of Evenly after like 4 years, it's kind of a you problem, but it doesn't really matter considering how dirt cheap Dinosaur is. After some fossil digging, I found to be the most expensive card for Dinosaur is Double Evolution Pill, sitting at around $3 per copy, while the rest of the deck is literal pennies. This gives you plenty of flexibility on whatever build you want to play, and if I were going budget and saving up for other staples or even a different deck, I would totally go for the Extravagance Beatdown build, especially due to Extravagance being super cheap at around $10 for the gold rare after its reprint. Dinosaur is a perfect and one of my favorite examples of a rogue deck, and I think that if you're looking for something cheap and really fun, it's definitely the deck for you. Next up on our list is going to be Prank Kids. Now, Prank Kids were never really the most budget deck of all time in its original inception, however, it wasn't the most unaffordable except for things such as Dodo Doodle Doo and Prank Kids Place. However, now it's absolutely dirt cheap after all of the reprints in Maximum Gold Eldorado, with the only expensive card for the actual core being Prank Kids Rip, Roar, and Roaster, sitting at around $8 for the secret rare as it hasn't had any sort of reprint and was the only one really not reprinted at all in the set. However, this doesn't really matter considering that you usually only play 1 to 2 at most. Prank Kids have just proven time and time again that they just won't die, even with a limit to their powerful card in the form of Prank Kids Meow Meow Mew, which allows them to do their 1-card combos multiple times on repeating turns at multiple copies. It still manages to keep its tier 1 status again with the adventure token engine. While admittedly that engine is exorbitantly overpriced, I feel like you don't really need it for the deck to be successful. Instead of running the adventure package, you could run a mass variety of different, even cheap hand traps, considering that about 16 or more cards in your deck are just 1-card combo starters. Hell, the deck can even run the recently fully released Skill Drain, which, because of the wording on the card, allows you to still resolve the effects of your monsters that tribute themselves for cost, such as Dodo Doodle Doo, Bow Wow Bark, and Battle Butler. From personal experience, the deck is super fun to pilot and will definitely treat you well if you take the time to learn it. Coming in at number 3, we have Eldlich. Yes, the deck whose boss monster used to be $100 a pop now sits at a comfy budget control deck. Both Maximum Gold and Maximum Gold Eldorado were super kind to the Golden Boy and his pals, reprinting not only all of the back row, but himself multiple times. The most expensive card in the core seems to be Eldlich himself, with the gold roughly getting you around $4 out of your wallet, while the rest remains 1, 2 to even pennies. Now, while some of the most powerful generic cards in the deck, such as Skill Drain and Lord of the Heavenly Prison, aren't quite budget friendly at the moment, that doesn't really stop the deck from being competitively viable whatsoever. Those cards are really nice to have, of course, but that doesn't really stop you from being able to pick up the core and running a few staple generic traps while you slowly pick up the rest of the pieces for the deck. Plus, Skill Drain just got that reprint in Hidden Arsenal, so yeah, you're probably fine. Number 2 may be a surprise to some of you, but shouldn't surprise most, and that's going to be Tri-Brigade. Yeah, for as long as it stayed top dog in our competitive formats, Tri-Brigade is really cheap. While the deck hasn't seen much competitive success so far this year after the recent Lyrilusk hits in the January 2022 Forbidden Limited list, Tri-Brigade variants are still really good overall. The best part of the deck lies in the fact that you can splash it into just about anything, and with the most expensive price tag being $5 for Tri-Brigade kit, you're going to be left with plenty of money for whatever engine you choose to run it with. The Lyrilusk package, while hit super hard on the last list, is still arguably the best engine to run with the deck, and if you really want to see what the deck can still do after the Forbidden Limited list, I have a deck profile plus combo tutorial up in the corner, you should go check that out, and overall, it's not really too pricey. Zodiac is a great going second build of the deck that remains fairly cheap as well on its own, with the main cost going towards the copies of Divine Arsenal AA Zeus Sky Thunder, which you're probably going to have multiple copies of, because it's an amazing board breaker that the deck can shit out so easily. There's even the Melfi variant, which actually saw success at a regional, which gets to abuse cards like Obedient Schooled without falling into the restriction too hard. Finally, if you choose not to play any of these, you can actually play the deck pure with a bunch of power traps and hand traps, and then when you get the money, you can just toss in a random DPE engine and call it a day. Before we get into our number one pick, here's a few honorable mentions that didn't quite make the list. Dinomorphia is a brand new trap-based strategy that came out in Battle of Chaos, which revolves around having your life points in order to use powerful effects. The most expensive cards in the archetype are Dinomorphia Theritzia and Dinomorphia Domain, which will run you about $10 and $5 a piece respectively, with the rest of the cards being under 50 cents. The only things keeping me from putting this deck on the list is the lack of the new support in the form of Dinomorphia Rexsturm and Frenzy in Dimension Force coming out in May, as well as the teetering prices of some of the trap cards that it really likes to play, such as Ice Dragon's Prison. Fluanderies is another deck whose prices don't really run too high up there, but with the new quick play spell that came out in Battle of Chaos running you about $15 a pop for a 3 of, as well as the admittedly not mandatory exorbitant price of Mega Ryza, it just really wasn't able to make the cut for this list. Finally, Megalith Drytron was just a bit too steep for the pockets, with the Megalith stuff being admittedly dirt cheap, but with things like Mu Beta Fafnir being $10, Nova being $15, and even the Ritual spell being $5, it was just a bit shy of making the list until those kind of cards get reprints. However, if you do want to see a Megalith Drytron deck profile from relatively recently, I have one up in the corner as well, much like I did with the Lyrilusk Tri-Brigade list, and it's from a good friend of the channel, so you should totally go check that out as well. One more thing before we go to the top pick, if you've liked the video so far, please be sure to leave a like on the video as it helps put it into the algorithm and supports the channel overall. And if you want to see more awesome Yu-Gi-Oh content like this and support me and my goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month, you should totally go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as it costs you absolutely nothing and will support the channel more than anything else. Now let's go ahead and get to our number one budget deck for the competitive March 2022 format. Our number one pick for this list is, you probably guessed it, Virtual World. Now, Virtual World, as you may have seen in both mine and a bunch of other Yu-Gi tubers tier lists, remains a really solid tier 1 deck right now, with the 3 copies of Emergency Teleport recently fully released from the ban list, giving the deck a much better board presence in the beginning of the turn compared to what it had before, which it struggled with, as well as the Adventure engine coming out. Virtual World players are on the top of the Virtual World right now. However, the Adventure token engine isn't even necessary for the deck to be an absolute powerhouse. Its great power lies in the constant extension that the deck will have if you give it any sort of room to breathe, as well as being able to recycle its banished cards and keep a good resource game, while pulling out powerful rank and level 6 and 9 Synchros and Xyz. The end boards of this deck can also be quite terrifying, with things such as Shen Shen, Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, Invoked Kaliga, and Virtual World Gate Chuchi, all being able to stare you down even at once. You could even Scythe Lock with the deck of all things, utilizing cards like Beatrice and Dragonlark Peyrin. The most expensive card you'll absolutely need for the deck isn't even a Virtual World card itself, but Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, who at the cheapest runs you about $5, and assuming of course you're not playing a Crystron Halka-Fibrax Punk build. Or, you know, Zeus, but a lot of people have Zeus right now, and it's not even that expensive. For all of these reasons, I do feel like Virtual World is an amazing tier 1 budget deck that I feel like just about any Yu-Gi-Oh player can sit down and enjoy, even if it does take some time to learn. With all that out of the way, that's gonna do it for the video. Thank you all so much for checking out my top 5 budget decks for the March 2022 competitive Yu-Gi-Oh format, and be sure to tell me down in the comments below what you thought about it, as well as if you think I missed any deck or said something wrong about a deck. Also, totally let me know if you've been seeing any success with these decks or even some other budget deck that I haven't said. But for now, that's gonna have to do it for the video. If you liked it, please sure to leave a like, as it helps put this video and the channel into YouTube recommended. And if you really liked it and you want to see more awesome Yu-Gi-Oh content like this, and support me in my goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month, totally subscribe, because that would mean the world to me. But once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. This is Aurora, signing off.